Here's our first example. So our first example is basically responsive design. As per usual with me, I don't try to make things look super fancy, mainly because I just don't have the time. But also the idea behind this is to give very basic examples so that you can kind of see what's being done and figure the rest out yourself. Because to be honest, that's where the real learning takes place. You need someone to impart the basic wisdom to you, but in the end, you really need to dig in and figure it out yourself. So we got a pretty basic layout here. Couple of divs, a container div with a couple paragraph divs. I'm just calling them paragraphs because technically there were 2 paragraphs in here, but I kind of lost the spacing when I was working inside of Code Sandbox here. Not a big deal. The idea is still there, the concept at least. So container and paragraph, that's pretty much all we got here. This is pretty basic overall. Border box is just making sure it helps with flexbox sizing and things of that nature. It's a certain way in which, this is the one thing I didn't research for the stream. I do remember sort of what border box means, but you can go and look up what the box sizing. There's a couple different box sizings. One of them is border box. For flexbox, this is the one that should probably be on, and I think most of the frameworks that are out there right now set this by a default. I think the border box is the default that most frameworks use, including let's see here, the one I was using, which is oh good gosh, now I can't remember it. Yeah, that one. Tailwind. There we go. Tailwind. Yes, it was Tailwind I was thinking of. So yeah, they use border box. I think, like I said, most of them do because it works better with a lot of the flexbox. And flexbox is the one that you'll see used in a lot of responsive design. The main reason for that is because it allows things to be flexible, hence flexbox, based upon the amount of input and all those kinds of things. In this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a desktop version of the site and also a mobile version of the site. Now in here as well, I also used the new media query syntax as well. So some pretty decent learning in here. Basically, the container, as you saw, which is the divs surrounding all of this here, all of this here, the div surrounding that is set to display flex, and flex wrap is set to wrap. Basically, it'll wrap if it gets to a point where it can't display side by side any longer. And we're telling it when it can't go side by side. So basically, in normal non-mobile settings, we want each paragraph to take up 50% of the page. So we give flex 50%. So basically, it will take up half the page. Now, flex can be a percentage. If I'm right, you can even use numbers. If I remember right, like if you have like 3, you could say, let's say you had 3 different items here. You could say 1, 2, 1, and the middle one would take up 2 spots, while the right ones would take up 1 spot. So they'll divide the space evenly between them based upon the number of the number within flex. So if there's 3 of them and flex is 1 for each one of those columns, then each one will take up 33 1/3%. If it's like what I said, 1, 2, 1, then the one in the middle, of course, would take up 50%, and the right 2 would take up 25%. So flexbox is kind of a good word for it because it's very flexible in the way you can use a lot of the different features and things like that. I simply put a padding of 4 because when I didn't have it in there, it was hard to tell where one began and the other one ended. It kind of just crammed them all together, and you couldn't see that there was actually a division here. So that was really just for the presentation. It has nothing to do with anything else. But as we get to where the width is less than 600 pixels, basically then we are going to then invert it to where each paragraph now takes up 100%. And you'll see it here as I actually decrease the size. Once I get to where it's less than 600 pixels, now the 2 paragraphs are one on top of another. And as we scroll back out, they go back to where they're side by side. So we're setting 600 pixels as our I guess that would be maximum width, I guess, for a mobile device. It can be different for everyone. Some people put them a little bit higher. You can put it however you want to. There's many of the frameworks out there, like Tailwind and other ones. They have their own settings. Tailwind has, I think it's extra small, medium, large, and extra large, I think. And you can, and they have their own default settings, but inside of Tailwind, there's a configuration file. You can actually set those settings if you wish to. So you can set each one to its particular height. You can use, you don't have to use pixels. I'm using pixels just because it was easier for me to do. I didn't want to have to calculate the rims, but you could use rims, which are probably a better way of doing things, especially like I said, when it comes to determining when certain things hit. I actually for the width here, it's probably not a bad idea to use pixels, since rims are really meant to be used for when things adjust. Rims are really good for things like fonts and things like that, so that when you get into a mobile situation, the font actually looks bigger, because a lot of times, like I've said, when you get into a mobile situation, the buttons that you have that would look fine and work perfectly fine on desktop will no longer work very well on a mobile device, because you have to hit it with your finger. So if you have this little itty bitty button about this big, it's harder to hit it with your finger than if you have a much bigger and much rounder button. It's a lot easier to push those things. That's where a lot of these things come in. So pretty basic, pretty easy example here. Nothing that I would consider too complex to understand. Like I said, this is the new media query. It used to be, let's see here, I believe it was min width, max width is what it used to be, which was a little confusing, because you had to kind of figure out, okay, is min width going to be where the mobile crosses over, or is it the minimum width before, is the minimum width to become desktop? So, and what does max width mean and all that? And so I really like that they went to this style. This style is more, feels more programming like almost. It makes sense. Width is less than or equal to 600 pixels. So I'm saying if my current width is at least 600 pixels or less, then I want to set my paragraph to 100%. I love this. When someone posted this about a month or two ago on X, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness for this, because I always, every time I had to handwrite media queries, I wanted to pull my hair out, just trying to remember what's what and how to get things going. It would take me a little while to remember all that stuff. But yeah, now with this in there, it's really nice. It's nice to have a more easier way, and you can do not only this. Let me see if I can find that article, because you can do between this and this. So this new format allows you to do kind of the between one and another. I'm wondering if I still have it. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Good. There's some other CSS media query stuff that came out as well. When else, and some other cool stuff too. Let me get to the important part here that I'm trying to show, and then I'll switch screens for you. Here we go. Here's what I'm talking about. So we will go ahead and switch screens real quick. No, we're going to replace, and we're going to go to this, and we're going to share. And so here's what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, where you can say, you can test between two widths. So if you want to say if it's between one width or another, here is the actual way that you can do the whole between one width. 500 pixels is greater than the width, was greater than or equal to the width, or I guess in that case it would be less than or equal to, and the width is less than or equal to 800 pixels. Yeah. So yeah, basically it's between 500 pixels and 800 pixels. So really interesting stuff. Some interesting stuff we've got in here. This is where, here's the old style that I was talking about, the whole max width and min width stuff. This is how it used to be. And like I said, it always confused me a little bit, because when you're trying to do something, you're trying to figure out, is it this, is it that? Here's where I want it to be less than or equal to 800 pixels. So that makes sense to me, instead of trying to say min width. But that's me. I'm going to jump back over before I kill that screen. And we'll jump back over here, because I've got my other example here as well. Okay. So once again, pretty basic, nothing too complex here. Display flex, set it to wrap so that it'll actually wrap. Because if you don't put flex wrap in there, when you do this, what'll happen is this thing will just get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you'll get to here, and you'll have these itty bitty little things about this big, and they'll still be fighting each other trying to get there. So you need to tell it's okay to wrap, basically. So you tell it's okay to wrap, and then you give it the whole width 600 pixels, and make sure that the paragraph actually takes up the entirety of the window at that width or smaller. And that's really the whole idea of responsive design, is making something that that works both on desktop and on mobile. So what we'll do